Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our good friend, Katie Rosenberg, Mayor for the City of Wausau.
Najang Hmong Wausau Festival. Congratulations to the Hmong Wausau Festival Planning Committee on what is guaranteed to be another enormously successful weekend, thanks to your nonstop hard work. And to those of you who are visiting, welcome to Wausau. You are one of the thousands and likely tens of thousands of folks who are joining us this weekend from across the nation to celebrate Central Wisconsin's Hmong heritage, history, and accomplishments. This festival is responsible for hundreds of sports and dance teams coming to Wausau to compete and infusing millions of dollars into our local economy. It is an absolute honor to be here today with my friends and colleagues, fellow electeds, and especially Yilang Zhang, who has been working relentlessly for months on this event, but also making sure Central Wisconsin's Hmong community is not just at the table, but part of our political and governing processes. As Executive Director of the Hmong American Center, Yilang ensures that all of us are living up to our collective expectations, and that we are a community that welcomes all, a community that values all, that we are being and showing our best selves to each other, and that we are a community for all. When Wausau discovered elevated levels of PFAS in our drinking water, Yilang ensured that the message was conveyed to non-English speakers in the Hmong community by putting it on WNRB radio and other Hmong language platforms. He used the Hmong American Center and rallied his staff and volunteers to act as a distribution site for bottled water and filter pitchers so everyone in Wausau had access to water. Nobody is ever forgotten on Yilang's watch. And if you are one of Yilang's many mentees, friends, or acquaintances, you know that he will eventually encourage you to be part of our community's elected and appointed bodies. So I feel so lucky that he introduced me to his colleague, Hmong American Center Board President, B. Van Her. So in addition to his leadership at the Hmong American Center, B is currently a member of Wausau's Liberation and Freedom Committee, and his contributions have helped us all become more mindful of our entire community as we consider policy. He is smart and kind, and he's a quiet leader until he says exactly what needs to be said. Last fall, Wausau was preparing to welcome the first wave of political refugees in 20 years. The last time refugees resettled in Wausau was in the early 2000s when the Thai government closed Wat Tam Krabat refugee camp, and thousands of Hmong refugees who lived there came to America, including 500 who joined us right here in Central Wisconsin. At a committee meeting last fall, members, including B, heard from former Wausau School District Director of Education and English as a Second Language, Nell Anderson, who shared some of the ways the community helped acclimate Hmong refugees to their new homes, schools, and communities. It was there that B said something that took my breath away. He thanked Nell for her work, and he said, "Because of individuals like you, a lot of our Hmong community members have grown up and bettered their lives. The things we've learned throughout our educational years stuck with us because of teachers like you who helped us and guided us and never gave up on us." And he shared insights about his own family's resettlement in Wausau. He wanted to make sure we understood the family structures of our new refugee neighbors, that we weren't contributing to loneliness or dissolution of community, that we could reassure our new neighbors that they're safe here. And he used his own experience as a refugee and a child of refugees as the starting point. A few weeks ago, I asked B if he'd be willing to tell me more about his experiences as a refugee growing up. And he is soft-spoken, and you can tell he doesn't want to be the center of attention, but he agreed, and he said yes. And he even allowed me to share some of his story with you today. Before I do, I have props. I want to show off this rock. It's quartzite, and I grabbed it yesterday from Rib Mountain. This rock is 1.7 billion years old. It's older than any mammal, older than fish. It's still about 2 billion years younger than the first life on Earth. And, I brought this rock with me today because of a story B told me about his very first memory when he lived in a refugee camp in Thailand. His dad was drawing water from a well so he could shower, and B was a toddler, and he was the perfect size so that when his dad briefly turned, B disappeared into the well. His dad and uncles worked frantically, tying together 2 bamboo ladders to reach him deep in that well. And when they triumphantly drew B back up to the surface of the earth, he was still clutching a rock from the bottom of the well as evidence of where he had been and how miraculous it was that he survived that journey. So many of us here have heard stories of our Hmong allies in the Secret War, but for many families who lived through it, there was a lot of waiting, a lot of wondering, and attempting to cling to something solid after the war had ended. That's what B's family went through. They lived in a Thai refugee camp for decades. His grandpa was unwilling to relocate, even after watching his other family members leave for America. And then one day, his grandpa was out tending to his field, and bandits showed up to rob him. And then they killed him. And one of his sons ran back to the rest of the family to share the devastating news, and his family decided that they needed to leave for their own safety and to find that bedrock on which to build their lives and to realize their own American dreams. He is the oldest son of his family's 6 children. His family moved here in the mid-90s when he was 5 years old. That's 20 years after the first Hmong families arrived, but just a few years after fierce discussion over schooling and busing in the Wausau School District. He called his generation a tweener culture because he and his family were brand new to Wausau, but the Hmong community was growing and putting down their own roots in central Wisconsin.